ingredient. The mentors who came in with a PowerPoint, laying out with bullets how to transform the life of the young person were unmitigated failures. After 9 months, only 9% of those relationships were even meeting. The kids were hiding from their mentors. The mentors who basically just listened. After that same 9 months, 70% were still actively meeting, and they were having all the difference in the world. It turns out mentoring is like a souffle. You can't rush it. It takes time. It takes about 12 hours a month in terms of time in the most concrete sense, but even more important, it takes a different relationship with time. It takes a kind of slowness that so many people in midlife rushing around, multitasking, find it tough to carry out. And so all of those findings led me to think about, first of all, where are the great undiscovered repositories of time in society, and maybe where is the great repository of a different relationship to time. And from that, I started thinking about the role of older people, and particularly how we could work with younger generations.
Mr. Freedman, what do you think that people who perhaps seem to be wealthy in their 20s, become wealthy in their 70s, and are immensely talented should do with the rest of their lives?
Well, I think we're seeing all these wonderful role models. I don't know if role models is the right example, but Bill Gates left Microsoft a couple of years ago in his early 50s and said it's not about retirement, it's about reordering priorities. And there are many other kind of high-flying figures from the ranks of the wealthy who are dedicating themselves in a very substantial way to trying to do good things in the world. But I think even for the rest of us, there is this recognition, this wonderful kind of combination. I told Gary Maxworthy's story earlier, where we realize at some point, maybe it's in our 50s, maybe in our 60s, that we're not going to live forever. A friend dies, we have a scare ourselves, and time suddenly becomes finite. And at the same time, if you look at the actuarial tables, you realize that we'll probably live a long time. And this kind of compression and expansion simultaneously of time, and to have that happen as a generation, so you get a new perspective, but actually enough time to do something with that perspective in most cases. And it's a remarkable moment. And so when I talk to people who are at this point of change, I say, even though there's oftentimes economic pressure to, for changing jobs, to move into something else quickly, to still have a longer-term time horizon, to think of this as a period of maybe 20 years, 25 years. There was an ill-fated TV show on HBO, I think, a couple of years ago called 20 Good Years with John Lithgow and Jeffrey Tambor. It lasted 2 unsuccessful episodes, but that was about 2 60-year-olds who sat down at the actuarial table and realized they probably lived 20 more years and asked that important question about what's next.
Could you speak briefly about some of the specific nonprofit programs that you have available, and also any resources that you have available for those people in this cohort to start this journey?
Sure. I talked about John Gardner before, and he had a realization when he was Secretary of HEW that if we succeeded with programs like Medicare and the Older Americans Act and expanding Social Security, freeing older people up from a hand-to-mouth existence, providing people independence, that would be a platform for what he called Operation Give Back, the chance to use this experience in new and important ways. And he wrote a concept paper, a couple pages, a couple decades later, called the Experience Corps. And it was basically the idea for a national program mobilizing the older population to help particularly young people. And Cleveland is one of the early sites in Experience Corps, which is now in 20 cities around the country. And the majority of folks in that program spend 20 hours a week, 15 hours a week, working one-on-one, helping kids grades K through 3 read. And new research from Washington University in St. Louis shows important benefits to the older people, but just as significant important benefits to the young people, that having an experienced core mentor or tutor is as effective as small class size, for example. So here's an opportunity right here in Cleveland. But many people will want to move in different directions, and I think we need to do more to help people, as I was saying earlier, get from then to now. One project I'm excited about is a pilot we've been doing in Silicon Valley, mostly with retired Hewlett-Packard employees who want to move into education or the environment. It's a fellowship program. It's essentially a gap year for boomers, for people over 50. And you spend a year working with an organization because there's a lot of evidence that people who want to make a change aren't going to be successful if they just discover what their dream is or their bliss. The best way to do it, according to an accumulation of research, is to try things on. You know, you might be interested in battling climate change, but that's a big difference from working in an environmental organization. And I think we need to do even what we do for medical students, where they get to rotate through different specialties. You know, you get to spend a few weeks working for a different organization and then a few weeks with another organization. So I think the more we can do to essentially lower the barriers for organizations and for individuals to try on something, because few people have time to really think about what's next. They're so busy in midlife. I'm happy to say that the Encore Fellows program is part of the new Serve America Act that's named after Ted Kennedy, that was passed earlier in the year. It will create Encore Fellowship programs in all 50 states. It will also create, if fully funded, 25,000 positions within AmeriCorps for people over the age of 55. So I'd like to see us do more to take those AmeriCorps opportunities and help them be not just a year of service to the community, to the country, but also an opportunity for people to transition into a new chapter. So I think national service is a great chance to make this shift. Finally, I think we need school for the second half of life. I talked about Elder Hostel before. When Elder Hostel was started 25 years ago, it was a great relief. There were some older people who were fearless, intrepid, who were willing to wade into a classroom of 19-year-olds or 20-year-olds and audit a class, but there wasn't any kind of pipeline for that to happen. And Elder Hostel created that pipeline. It helped stimulate a whole lifelong learning industry, and it changed the culture so that people look forward to retirement as a time to learn, and it was easy to act on it. I'd like to see a new kind of education that's helping people move from one period of engagement to a new period that has some of the elements of lifelong learning, but also opportunities to retool, and I think community colleges are one of the best places to start. Thanks.
Your idea of finding meaningful work latter half of life sounds very appealing, particularly for upper middle class people who have some financial security. Do you have a similar program or suggestion for what I believe are the vast majority of people who are hitting 65, who are no longer employed, and who are trying to get by on $800 a month in Social Security?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for asking that question. I agree. You know, some people are going to be able to buy their way out of the situation, although it's striking. Even people of significant means, I think, are oftentimes struggling. But what if you don't have significant means, as most people don't, whose 401ks or 201ks or 101ks? I think this is where public policy can play an absolutely critical role. And I'll tell a story. In Encore, I wrote about a woman named Sandra Sessoms Penny who grew up. She was a child of sharecroppers in Florida. When she graduated from high school,